We love Zencaster because it allows us to record the audio for our podcast and create the video segments we use for our weekly Sister Scoop episodes. Zencaster has helped us make content capture simple.
It's now super easy to record a podcast with Zencaster. Log in using your browser and start recording a high-quality podcast right away. Record studio quality sound and up to 4K video with your guests, and feel a sense of zen knowing Zencaster's multi-layered backups ensure you always have your recordings in the highest quality, even if the connection is unstable.
If you've thought about podcasting before and realized that you need a lot of different tools and services, those days are over. With Zencaster's all-in-one podcasting platform, you can create your podcast in one place and distribute it to Spotify, Apple, and other major destinations.
Just go to zencastr.com/pricing and use our code SistersAssembled, and you'll get 30% off your first month of any Zencaster paid plan. We want you to have the same easy experiences we do for all of our podcasting and content needs. It's time to share your story.
Katie and I are always hungry, and one snack we both love is beef jerky. That's why we're so excited to tell you about one of our favorite jerky brands, Matt Hat Jerky.
Matt Hat's delicious taste makes it a great snack, and the variety of flavors, including original, black truffle, and my personal favorite, roasted garlic, means there's a flavor for everyone. Plus, it's local to the area where we grew up in, which we just love.
Use the link in the show notes below to get some Matt Hat Jerky for yourself, and make sure to use our coupon code SistersAssembled for 10% off. Hello and welcome to Sisters Assembled, your home for all things MCU. And right now, that means we're your home for all things Agatha All Along. And today we're going to be talking all about episode 6, which is, of course, focusing on our good friend, our new friend, Billy Maximoff / Wiccan, and getting everything from his point of view. So, with that being said, I'm going to do the usual and kick it over to Kate, who's going to start the episode with her thoughts, reactions, and immediate takeaways.
Yes, here I am. Sorry, guys. I have to be honest. I'm just going to tell everybody where I'm at mentally right now, so we just get that off the table. I am mourning the loss of Liam Payne from One Direction currently. I was a big Directioner growing up. I am in a lot of sadness. But I'm here and I am muscling through. But yeah, sorry, I having a day. Regardless, getting into Agatha. I didn't mind this episode. But the last 10 minutes is what I needed the episode to start with. And so I, the whole time, was waiting for that. Whatever. That's how they chose to do it. It was definitely that filler episode because I have to say, other than maybe 3 things, I didn't feel like I needed the whole entire episode to revolve around his backstory and getting us where we already are. I don't think I need to see all that. I'm fine that we did it. I'm not saying I'm not, but with how we ended last episode, we dropped a little bit,
Totally agree. My first thought as soon as the episode was done was, oh, so I found the filler episode.
Yeah.
And it definitely, to your point, last episode, the levels of hype, I have not seen. I was going to say I haven't seen in a while, but honestly, people were so hype after Deadpool and Wolverine, and rightfully so. So it's been a good year, actually, for Marvel levels of hype, returning, to the before times. And it's just been a good year. And last week was really kind of the height of, I think, where Agatha's been, to date. And then they were like, we know we have you now. Welcome to the slow episode.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, you did that. And you have me anyway. I still want to see next week, but I'm not salivating the way that I was at the end of last episode. I'm not chomping at the bit for Wednesday because they kind of lost me a little bit. And it's important to have the backstory, and I'm glad we're going to dive into that, I'm sure. I'm glad that we got to see how Billy got to this place, all of that. Get to learn a little bit even about who William Kaplan was, which was super interesting. I didn't think I'd ever see. Honestly, I didn't really actually think that much about William Kaplan. Who was he before Billy Maximoff took over his body, or any of those ramifications? And there are definitely some things I want to talk about there. So that was great. But to your point, that could have been the first 10 minutes of the episode, and then we could have gone on with the in real time story. And instead, we spent most of the episode on a flashback.
I actually have to disagree with you about the fact that it kind of lost you. It actually made me want more. I left the episode sitting there going, are you freaking kidding me? I have to wait until next Wednesday for this. because I was waiting for more of the ramifications. And because that came only in the last few minutes of the episode, the only person he interacted with on the road at that point was Agatha. And she's not shocking to me because she already knew who he was at the end of episode 5. I want to see Jennifer and Lilia react, which we know they live. We saw the mid series trailer. They're alive, covered in dirt, just like Agatha. They're good. They come back next episode. Next episode is Lilia's trial. So we all know this is going to be fine. I want their reaction though. I didn't really care necessarily about Agatha's because, again, we all knew she knew. We saw that. I actually genuinely left the episode going, dang it, I am going to be annoyed about having to wait for this now. I want to see how this plays out further.
And I think that's a totally fair take. And there is a part of me that's even more excited to see because they forced me to wait really not 1 week, but 2 to get a resolution fully to those last few minutes of episode 5. But I will say it's not like the level of like when I left last week and I finished that episode, I was so hyped. Like it was all over my For You page. Everybody was just absolutely going bananas. And I feel like the reactions this week that I've seen so far, while a little limited, have been more muted. I feel like people are, analyzing to the level that we normally do and talking about the comparison to the comics and all of that, which is great and it's super valuable, but it's not like, oh my god, they had me in a chokehold because they ripped out "You Should See Me in a Crown" by Billie Eilish when he, was crowned as Wiccan. Like that just was a new like next level thing, and it did just bring down the temperature a little bit. I think overall, again, I didn't dislike the episode. It did just feel a little bit like filler because we really didn't have the opportunity to advance the current time plot line any further or much further at all.
I will agree with that. And that's kind of what I started by saying. We were definitely on a much higher level and this one dropped, but I want to just get us right into it, right? And actually, you talked about not really seeing much on your For You page and stuff. Obviously, due to other circumstances, my For You page has shifted a little bit.
Fair, yeah.
But I have to say, like, I also did not see almost anything relating to Agatha anywhere. Not like last week. Last week, it was everywhere. So I do think it was a little muted, but getting into it, we kind of knew going into this episode, it had been kind of assumed that this was going to be Billy's episode. And I'm not mad about the things we learned. I want to actually start with, because maybe you want to talk more about William. I personally don't have much to say about William's backstory as far as actually seeing William Kaplan. I liked how it was done. It made us know who he was. I also thought it was very smart of them to differentiate by calling him William and clearly not going by a nickname, and then having Billy be going by Billy. So that was smart because obviously Billy Kaplan, William Billy Kaplan in the comics. But I would actually start with the other 3 witches making the appearances they made, because I was like, what are we doing here? And what does this mean? What is the significance of all 3 of them being here? And I want to get into Lilia specifically in a second, but why did we need to see that he had a connection to all 3 of them?
I'm going to toss out a big old theory real early in this episode. Billy has mind control powers, right? And we saw in this episode he can't always control that. Obviously, we saw in episode, I want to say it was 2 by this point. Obviously, they came out together, so lines are a little blurred. But the first couple of episodes, Agatha's the one who is saying, I know some witches, and then she goes out. But what if that wasn't necessarily wholly her idea? If Billy's out here maybe subconsciously recognizing other witches from William's past, I guess it would be. That's the other weird thing, though, because he doesn't remember anything from William's past, like, well, William's life. So I don't know.
Do you want to hear my theory? I don't think the coven was ever Agatha's. I think the coven might be his. If you think about it, Agatha's, we actually talked about it in another episode. I said, everybody has a job except Agatha. And you were like, well, she's the leader. And I was like, oh yeah, I'll accept that. That's fine. I'll take that. Whatever. Every coven needs one. But she might not be. Because remember, the one person that we've been told several times is not a part of the coven is Teen/Billy. We were told multiple times he's not a coven member. But maybe the coven was always meant to be his. If you think about it, it might have been fate that Agatha went to Lilia first. Remember, she's the divination witch. That just might have been it. But she's the one who gave them the rest of the names.
Yeah.
And knowing her history now, he didn't need to know and remember Lilia from William. And the other two he saw after he was Billy because Alice was on the scene and he saw videos of Jennifer as Billy.
Yeah, you're right.
So, technically speaking, it could have been just pure fate, speaking of getting Agatha to Lilia. But when she wrote those names down, they might not have been meant to be part of Agatha's coven more than they're meant to be part of Teen's or Billy's.
I do think it's worth pointing out too, we've all been, of course, speculating who is Blackheart, right? And his boyfriend, by the way, can I just side note really quick? Their relationship is like the cutest thing. I was literally like giggling and kicking my feet. They are the most adorable couple. I love them so, so much. All right, side note done. But his boyfriend texts him a black heart. He says, "You're my heart," but he uses the black heart emoji. So, to your point, like, is Teen that black heart? Everybody talked about it, obviously being Rio because of her line. I actually think that that has more significance than we think because they're clearly trolling us.
Yeah.
They are giving us multiple, or one, I'm not sure, red herrings related to who that final member is. Let's not forget, we talked about early on, Deborah Jo Rupp still apparently has a arc left in the
Yeah.
last 3 episodes. So, there are now 3 contenders for who is Blackheart. Could it be that I'm going to get really slightly graphic here and I apologize in advance. Is it that, she comes back as like something worse, a zombie or something like we possibly theorized, and her heart is decayed and black because she died? Did the poison turn her heart black and we see that, when she comes back to life? I don't know. Is she now evil and that's why her heart is black? Is it her? Is it Rio? Is it Teen? I actually think that's a way bigger mystery than we all kind of thought. We've all kind of been, casually tossing out theories, but I have a feeling that's actually an important piece of information that we need to figure out.
I don't disagree because now that we know he has a connection to each of the other 3 witches prior to the Witch's Road, it puts more of an emphasis on the fact that that last member of the coven is technically missing.
Yeah.
And we assumed, to your point, it was Rio. We assumed, or I should say, we assumed, Agatha assumed, not really, she just was trying to cover herself because she also assumed it was Rio. It was Mrs. Hart, so she grabbed Mrs. Hart for that exact reason. And maybe it's Agatha. Let's not forget it could be Agatha because if this was meant to be Billy's coven, Agatha's name would be on the paper or she'd be the heart, theoretically, if that's what we're saying. If he is meant to be the coven leader, they were the 2 standing next to each other. We just all assumed it was Agatha.
Yeah, I think knowing his connection and the fact that he's kind of the center of the circle now, or the bridge basically between everybody, it adds a layer of complication, right? Because it always seemed like it was Agatha. She went to all of these witches. She and Jennifer have the past. Lilia knows her. Alice knows of her, even though she never doesn't seem like they really met before. And the same way that Agatha knew of her mother, and that's how she knew to find her. So it always seemed like Agatha was the central point, but maybe that's because it's being told from her perspective. Like, I think the other thing that was interesting about this episode is to revisit episode 1, where Agatha was still under Wanda's spell.
Oh my God.
Hilarious. Like, I literally was like crying. I was laughing so hard. But like to see how she had like created this whole experience and that we had experienced that with her in the guise of the spell, it then makes you wonder, okay, so if I'm viewing this whole thing from Agatha's perspective, what else is misleading? Because we all know she's not trustworthy, but now we can confirm that we are fully watching the show from the perspective of an unreliable narrator. So what else isn't true?
Yeah, and I want to talk about or give it a moment to shine that scene truly between her and Billy
In the living
when
room?
when she thinks she's questioning him. And obviously to your point, it looks so different to us in the first episode. Meanwhile, I think what's so funny about the spell is it is blocking out what these people are truly saying to her. She's completely twisting things in her mind because of the spell. So while he's having a completely normal conversation, at least trying to, she is just on another realm. And I like even when she like kicks the chair over in the first episode, but in this she just kicks the crap out of him. And like he just sits there and he's like, ow, like what the heck? Doesn't even like think twice about it though, because he understands she's in the spell, but still, I thought it was so freaking funny. But you do bring up a great point. It makes her even more of an unreliable narrator. And so that was part of why I also did enjoy this episode, seeing things from his point of view. I actually would really, really enjoy kind of if we switch narrator at this point and finish the series with him. I don't know if we will, and I don't think we will. It's still Agatha all along. But everything you just said wraps into the fact that I think after episode 2 in the blog post, and y'all can go on our Instagram and check it, I think I called it Teen All Along because I was like, I'm more worried about what this character is doing than our actual technical protagonist of the story because he is the one who I know has a future. He is the one that I know is going to open a door somewhere. And so I always have been saying since the very first 2 episodes, he's our protagonist. He is our main character. And I am excited to see what comes from now seeing his background, but where we're going now that everybody knows he's Billy Maximoff.
You know what that just jogged for me? That just made me so happy because I love like narrative parallels. The fact that you were calling it teen all along, but Agatha did the exact same thing in Wanda's show where we got this flashback of how Agatha was actually behind everything. And now we're seeing everything from teen's perspective in Agatha's show the exact same way that we did. I mean, was it episode 6 in WandaVision? Because that seems right.
If not, it was 7.
Yeah. So we're like close within the, narrative journey that they were able to do that and like have that cool perspective and that cool parallel. I just want to point that out because it really made me happy.
Yeah, no, and it was cool. And that's what I mean though. I think and I don't know if I was saying he could be the antagonist for her, but like he kind of is. But regardless of what I was saying, I was like, this is the character you got to keep your eye on. This is just the facts. But I want to circle back to Lilia because we got the answer for who put the sigil on him. And if you noticed, it seemed like she had one of her visions when she was doing it, and then she acted upon it. And then obviously, once you cast it, she doesn't remember him. So that's the end of that. But she, from the start, points out you have 2 lifelines. Yours splits because Billy or William Kaplan technically dies, although I want to get into the technicalities there. And Billy Maximoff comes. In the comics, to my knowledge and what I've read, it's a clear cut. This didn't seem like a clear cut, but again, we'll get to that in a second. Thoughts on Lilia being the one behind the sigil?
I liked it. I thought it was interesting that she basically set all of this into motion, right? Because obviously, like the car accident is such an important, like before and after moment, right? It's a watershed moment where William Kaplan leaves this earth and Billy Maximoff hops in and becomes Billy Kaplan. Very important. What I loved though is that they tied that accident into the Westview anomaly and the hex, and that is what caused it. And I also thought it was really interesting, and I will get to Lily in a second, I promise, because I know that's what you asked about. But I do want to say this, and this is the perfect time. I thought it was fascinating to get a perspective of regular people living outside of the hex just a few miles away. I think in WandaVision itself, we got maybe a teeny bit of that. We got the people at Sword who this is their job. They're supposed to deal with stuff like this. They're trained. They are not going to have a normal person's reaction because they were trained not to. But to see how it was affecting regular people's lives. I mean, he's at his bar mitzvah and he has to, this is William, has to literally evacuate his bar mitzvah because that was when Wanda decided to bring down the hex. And I think one thing that I love is when Marvel does show us those rare glimpses of how the Avengers and those, the enhanced individuals that we're seeing all the time are affecting regular people because it does ground it a little bit. Obviously, it's magic, so it's not fully grounded, but those little nuances that they're able to add are amazing. When it comes to Lilia being the one who put the sigil on, I think it makes so much sense because Lilia has been driving this whole thing. If you think about it, right? She puts the sigil on. She's the one who's seeing Alice, potentially seeing Alice die to save Agatha. One thing that people were pointing out after last week was if you put Lilia's sentences together that
Yes.
she says save Agatha or something in whatever it is episode 3, and then she says to Alice don't do it or something like that. And so if you're like putting it together, she's saying don't save Agatha. And so she's slowly piecing it together but too late. And what I love about this cadence of episodes is something that you mentioned, which is that she is going to be the next trial. So we're going to see her powers at work. We're going to see her greatest shame and whoever she wasn't able to save, because I still stand by our original theory that she was unable to save people she loved because either she couldn't interpret her visions or she misinterpreted them and put them in more danger. Whatever that turns out to be, I think we're seeing that right now. The problem is she's just not piecing it together quickly enough. She has the puzzle pieces, but she's just not quite up to where they are yet, because if she had been, she would have been able to save Alice. And so I love that low key Lilia has been the puppet master, maybe just a half step behind this entire time.
I do want to point out that we can't forget she doesn't remember some of these visions, though. So it's not necessarily about her being a step behind. It's the fact that she doesn't always have control. And so she does have these visions. Because even the two examples you said between Alice and Agatha, both of those she had, and then it was it. And even Agatha was like, yeah, save Agatha. Like, love that plan. And Lily is like, I don't know what the heck you're talking about right now. And when it happened to Alice, the same thing. Alice was like, what? And Lily was like, why are you looking at me like that? Like, what do you want? Because she doesn't even know she's having these moments. So I do want to kind of add that because I don't think she's a step behind. I think she genuinely isn't remembering she's having them.
That's a good point.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously the sigil affects what happens with William Kaplan, but you could tell she had a vision that made her write the sigil to begin with. So whatever that was, I don't know if she even necessarily, sigil or not, would have remembered that vision because I don't know if that was a real one or one of the ones she cannot control. Either way, what I would love to get to the root to, and we're not going to be able to, and I don't know if the show is going to show us this, but why? What power, what bigger power in the world, in the magic world, in the fates, whatever she calls to for her divination, told her, you need to put a sigil on this boy to protect him. And protect him from who?
I love this question, and I've been trying to puzzle over it because it is, I think, one of the biggest questions that we got coming out of yesterday's episode. Why did she put it on, and who does she think is the biggest danger that he should not reveal his identity to? Or actually, more importantly, and I think this might help us maybe start to piece together a theory, not reveal his identity until a certain point, because now he broke the little piece of wood, I guess it was. And what do they say? They make it so important to point out that the sigil is only in use and will be broken when it is no longer needed. And so we see at the end of episode 6 that he breaks the little piece of wood and the signifying that the sigil is no longer needed, which means whatever Lilia found was dangerous to him must have passed because he no longer needs that on. He no longer needs that protection. So is it that he, was able to finally tap into his magic? Because I think one important thing that we figured out about Billy this episode is he hasn't just been like hiding this magic this whole time. Other than reading minds, he really was not going on the offense, right? He was never really controlling things around him in the way that we saw him do with Lilia and Jennifer. Whereas I think last episode we came out saying, oh, man's been, a background mastermind this whole time. I think he's a much more of a novice than we thought. And so now I'm wondering, did the sigil just protect him until he was able to protect himself?
I think there's some complications here. And in order to move forward, we can't keep avoiding kind of the big what happened to William/Billy. In the comics, like I said, from my impression of things I've read and my research, it's a pretty clean, like, Kaplan goes, Maximoff in. The show made it very clear that's not what happened. And I kind of don't know if I like it or not. And maybe we'll see it pan out a little better.
I interpreted it the exact opposite of you. To me, it's very clear.
No, because here's the thing, and why I feel this way might actually help with some of the thoughts around the sigil. says to his boyfriend, I don't remember a single thing before the accident. I still don't. And I've just been playing pretend for the sake of my parents. But you can tell he struggles with admitting he's Billy Maximoff.
That's fair.
I think and I don't know if they're trying to say there's a bit of both of them, because even to Lilia's point, his lifeline splits into two, and she doesn't say like it goes a certain way. It's almost as if she's saying, no, like at some point, you pretty much have almost two souls inside your body. Like you have two lives. Obviously, it can be interpreted you literally have two lives and you go one way instead of the other. I understand that. But I'm saying it could be interpreted the other way. And when you look at his struggle through the episode prior to obviously current events, he doesn't know how to admit he's Billy Maximoff. I don't think it was a clear transition. It doesn't seem like Billy came into the body and was like, okay, cool, I'm Billy Maximoff, but I gotta play it cool because I don't know whose body I just snatched. Like, it's definitely seeming like it is confusing to him. And he's not sure, and he knows things aren't right, but he's just like, I'm just gonna live life because really I don't know what else to do right now. I'm not either right now, down to even when he is doing the list on paper and it's Wanda dead or something, or not missing but something. Vision not around. His brother missing. And then he leaves Billy Maximoff blank because it's like he cannot admit to himself that's who he is. He is struggling with that. So I do feel like it wasn't a clear transition and there were issues. I say all of this to say that might be where the sigil came in and why when it dropped when it did. Because I think it was him when he finally snapped and admitted to himself who he was, and Billy Maximoff came out fully. Because let's not forget, guys, Billy Maximoff was like 10, yes, but was very powerful at a young age already. I'm not going to say was completely aware of his powers and was able to do everything and was an expert, but he had his powers and was learning very quickly how to use them and control them. And at the time, had his mother helping him do that and hone in on his abilities. I think when he snapped after Alice's death, I think Billy Maximoff made his full appearance there. That's why even now he's like can't fully control his powers. I think he's struggling because he has to accept his full identity. Because he couldn't accept it, the sigil was just protecting him.
I love that. I think that makes a lot of sense because, to your point, I struggled with Billy not knowing who he was through the episode.
Yeah.
I truly think that William is gone. I genuinely believe that William died in that car accident. I don't think that it's two souls in one body. I don't think that the lifeline is split in that way. I think that William truly passed away. And I think that's what you heard when you heard the heartbeat, right?
Yeah.
Is it his heartbeat was slowing and it stopped. And then it picked up so rapidly because it was now Billy Maximoff in that body fully living, and that's how that was. So I do want to clarify that from my perspective, I do not believe that William Kaplan still remains in any form. But for some reason, whatever happened, Billy Maximoff is no longer aware when he wakes up in William's body of who he is. I think he knows that he's not William, but he doesn't know exactly who he is, to your point.
Yeah.
And I think, too, then you see, how different he is from William, and he starts to kind of carve out who he is at his core, even though he doesn't even understand his past or where he came from or who his real family is, because I think he knows that the Kaplans aren't it. And that's why he's so drawn to the sigil that he gets from Lilia, because it is tapping into this unconscious and subconscious memory that for whatever reason is locked. And to your point, it's not until the anger comes out that he's truly able to unlock both the magic and the memories. And I think if you think about Wanda, that is similar to her as well. It's not until she's protecting her family against Agatha and that she is truly angry that she makes the transition from a very powerful Wanda Maximoff to the full-on Scarlet Witch. I think what we've seen is with that type of chaos magic, it thrives on anger. And that is what makes them stronger, or at least helps them hone it or reach that next level. So, in so many ways, when Agatha was saying last episode, you're just like your mother, well, maybe she was seeing that parallel already, that he leveled up because of the anger. And she says it in this episode.
And you can't forget, and I'm about to smash this right now by saying this, emotion plays such a hardcore place in magic.
Yeah.
Wanda is the prime example of that. Going all the way back to her debut in Age of Ultron. The second she felt her brother die, she put out a massive blast that took out hundreds of Ultron's robots when she fell to her knees. When she was accepting that Vision was dead and was not able to get his body and was not able to give him a proper burial, and she went to the house. Technically, it was at the beginning of WandaVision, but it wasn't actually because it was in episode like 8. Her emotion literally created the hex. So to your point, when you're sitting there saying, Agatha saying, oh, you're just like your mother, correct. Because the high emotions that they are feeling is what brings out his magic in that moment. And I also want to add, in regards to the sigil, I truly think it had to be that moment because at the very end, or at the very end of the flashback, Agatha asks him who he is. He answers William Kaplan. Obviously, the sigil had blocked that from her point of view. She asks again because he doesn't know the sigil's blocking her. And he says Billy Maximoff. Still blocked. He doesn't buy it himself.
Yeah.
He doesn't believe in himself. He said both names because he's like, I'm both. I don't know. It was the moment that he lost his temper and the moment his magic came. And that was the switch. That was the official, no, I know who I am. And I want my brother, because I think we need to talk about that.
I'm so glad I was going to transition us right into it, because I think that's the other big reveal this episode is we have been waffling back and forth all miniseries / season, whatever you want to call it. Who does he want? Does he want Mom or does he want Tommy? And in this episode, I think even from the beginning, before he even says to her, his name was Tommy. Oh my God, when she called him Toby, I was dying. That woman is so funny. She is just so callous, but it's so funny the way Catherine Hahn delivers the lines.
Catherine Hahn is my queen. I love this woman. In anything I've seen her in, like I'm thinking specifically of Parks and Rec, this woman just steals the scenes that she is in. And obviously this show is named after her, but just it's not even dry humor. I don't know what to call it exactly, but it just is so effortless for her.
Yeah, she's incredible. She's absolutely just next level. But before he even says that, the first thing that Billy Maximoff says when he enters William Kaplan's body is Tommy. So it was pretty clear from early on in this episode that that was the driving factor. He wanted his other half. I don't think this is going to happen in Agatha All Along by any means, but I'm so excited to see what is unlocked in Billy when he gets his other half, because the second he acknowledged who he was, to your point, he was able to level up. But what happens then when he finds the other person who's the twin soul to his? When you think about what he becomes in the comics and the level of power, like he's one of the most powerful characters in the comics, period, the end. Like he's right there with Mama. Like it's those two, okay? Just to put that in perspective. I don't know if they're ever going to get him that far, or if it's going to be 10 years from now and that's when he's finally going to reach that level, because he's still 16. But I don't think he's going to be able to do that without Tommy and having that piece of him, because Tommy is a piece of him. So I just want to put out how excited I am for the reunion whenever that happens, whether it's Young Avengers or what, because we are going to see him go from cute little Wiccan who sometimes has issues controlling his powers to full, maybe not full Wiccan, but like leveled up. And that's going to be amazing.
I think it makes sense he's going for his brother. I know, to your point, you said we waffled back and forth, even in the blog. We actually did write it off because we were like, oh, but there's rumor that Tommy might get his own type of this show. Now, let's just say, guys, if that holds true, is he going to actually get Tommy at the end of this? I don't think so. I think he's going to get a hint towards his brother or get a piece. Yeah, because he even said, I've tried to find him. I've tried everything. So I think the road might help provide a literal roadmap to him to find his brother. I don't think we're going to see Tommy because, to our knowledge, he is not casted. Like, we are still seeing fan cast because nobody knows. Now, that's not to say Marvel hasn't kept it secret. I know that's a full possibility, but I'm just saying, to our knowledge, to the facts that we're hearing off screen, I will say I think us actually seeing Tommy is lower on the list. I will also say it was very smart of them that with his belief that Wanda is dead, he's not going after her because he doesn't think she's living.
Yeah.
So that was a very smart move, in my opinion, by Marvel to kind of be like, well, he's not going to go after his mom because he doesn't think she's alive.
But did you notice who did offer mom as an option? Agatha.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't think that that is a mistake. I don't think it's just that Agatha doesn't know what happened on Mount Wundagore, because I think if anybody, I mean, granted, I know she was under the spell, but I think if anybody is going to be tapped into the witch community and know exactly what is happening out there, it's going to be Agatha, and she will have, caught up on all of that good stuff. I think that Agatha is well aware that Wanda is still alive. And I think that was basically the closest we're going to get to an on screen confirmation that Wanda is coming back in this show. I do, though, find it a little strange that Billy is unable to feel his mother, or at least feel that she is still alive, because he very clearly mentions that he can feel Tommy. He knows he's alive, but he just can't locate him. Whereas you would think with his special connection that he has to his mom because of their compatible magic, he would be able to feel the same for her, even though everybody's telling him that she died.
Exactly. And I honestly, you said it all very perfectly. I think he accounts for the fact he feels his brother and his mom is still, but yeah, Agatha's tuned in. Agatha knows. I mean, I actually don't know how much Agatha knows because she's been under Wanda's spell for 3 years. And the last she was told was that Wanda was dead. So I don't know if she believes that, but I think she's not probably quite as in tune as she might have usually been.
Fair.
Just to throw that out there. But I have two other things I need to address. Why the heck did you bring back Evan Peters for this? I'm so mad at you, Marvel. Like, it's not even funny.
Like, Ralph Boner was frustrating enough the first time, and then they were like, we're gonna double down because we know it made you mad.
Yeah.
And I was like, also, like, if I'm Evan Peters, why am I signing on for this? Like, I get it's a quick paycheck, whatever, but like, I full well know I'm never going to play that character again because they're recasting. So why would I continue to tie myself to this, especially because it wasn't well received the first time?
And WandaVision was one thing because I still remember that episode when he shows up at the door. That's still ingrained in my head. And again, to your point, very frustrating in the long run. But I know we all were like, what the crap? What the crap? Why now, though? Why was he brought back for this role specifically? To be a now crazy Ralph Boner, which I get it. I do. At the end of the day, he had two witches technically in his mind at one point. One in which made him kind of a mutant. Like, he wasn't actually a mutant, but like managed to make him one using her magic. And then obviously now he's still human. So I'm sure there's a lot of psychological trauma from that. I don't disagree. But I was like, what is going on here? This was so weird. And now I remember as soon as the trailer dropped, the mid-series trailer, everybody was like, it's Ralph Boner. And I was like, what the heck? Why? And then it actually was him. And I was like, but why? I don't get it.
Yeah, I don't know. There's a part of me that wants to be like, there's a reason. But then I also am like, you did this to me before. I don't want to be played for a fool twice. And also, I full well know you're recasting the character. So, no, you don't get to do this to me again.
Yeah, it was weird. I don't think I loved it. Personally, do I love Evan Peters? Yes, of course. So I was happy to see him grace my screen again. But I wasn't really a huge fan of that moment. I think it makes sense. I think in the story it made sense. But just knowing it was Evan Peters that was wasted in this role to begin with, and then you brought him back to waste him even further in this role, I was like, come on, guys. Like, I can't. You're frustrating the crap out of me with this.
Yeah, agreed. The fact that they doubled down on it, I was like, no, recognize your mistake and don't make it worse.
Exactly. There are actually, I lied. Two more things I want to touch on. One brings us back to something we were talking about, which is the sigil. And I asked you what we thought Lilia was trying to protect him from. I didn't want to have the conversation yet because I wanted to talk about the body snatching. Because what he did to the witch laws is illegal. Let's not forget, while Wanda and Strange both did it in MOM with different means, Billy still took a dead body and placed his soul within it. That is not legal. The witches don't really have laws, but if they did fully, that's one of them. Like, you're not supposed to body snatch. It's not within the laws of reality and all that crap. I would say rewatch MOM, but I'm not going to ask you to do that. Just understand that that was the whole point, right? What do they call it? Dream walking, sleep,
Yeah, dream walking.
yeah. I was like, not sleepwalking. That's a real thing, but dream walking.
You can do that as a non-magical person.
Yeah, yeah. But like permanently sleepwalking or dream walking. Whatever.
Now you're
Y'all know what I
confusing
mean.
yourself.
I know. I know. I was like, I was fine, and then I got myself lost. Regardless, permanently dream walking, pretty much. Now, did 10-year-old Billy Maximoff's soul
13. He was 13.
Billy Maximoff was not.
Yes, he was. Because he says to Alice, a lot happened when I was 13 too. And that was Billy.
Oh, I thought I was just referring to like, okay, whatever. 10, 13, whatever he is. Year old Billy Maximoff know he was gonna body snatch when his personal body was literally turning to little pieces and fluttering away? Probably not. Let's be real. Probably was not aware. Also, what were the chances that somebody died right next to the hex and he body snatched? Regardless of if he meant to or not, I think there has to be consequences to him doing that. Even Agatha was like, I'm a little impressed with what he did. So now I raise the question. While I understand why Agatha has the connections, do we think the Salem 7 is actually after him?
I have so many thoughts. I'm going to answer your question first and then I'm going to go to my other thing. No, I don't think the Salem 7 is who's after him. I don't know. This goes back to something I brought up and you were like, I think you're thinking too deeply about it. Who governs the witches? I don't think that the Salem 7 are like the enforcement crew of all magical folk. I think they just really, really hate Agatha Harkness and they have been able to get in a position where it would be sanctioned if they killed her. I think they probably have worked for hundreds of years to get into that place, but I don't necessarily consider them like the enforcement force of all magic.
I don't disagree, but I do need to point this out. If the Salem 7 wanted to kill Agatha, she was under a spell incapacitated for 3 years. Why was it when Billy turned up that the Salem 7 turned up?
That's a good question. It's a very fair point. It's a very fair point.
Because I don't think they're going to sit there and be like, well, as long as Agatha's in that spell, I mean, she's powerless and she's out of her mind.
But I will raise you another one. He was living as William for 3 years at that point. So what is it about the two of them together?
Fair. So maybe it has to deal with both of them.
It's very possible.
But I don't know if Agatha's the only target here. And I have to think he has consequences to technically breaking the laws of magic and taking somebody who should have died and living in their body.
Oh, I 100% agree. I think we may have missed an episode mentioning Mephisto, so I'm going to do it for this episode. I mean, I know he's the devil, but like, was that how it was done? Is he managing these things? What is Rio's role? Because if she's supposed to be the one who takes the dead body, shouldn't she have been there to take Williams? Maybe she's been out here trying to get this body all this time. I don't know. To your point earlier, Rio's the one person in this coven who he never had any interaction with prior to being on the road. So that's the other angle. The one other thing that your setup to your question sparked in me is the end credit scene of WandaVision where we hear Billy call his mother for help. At what point does that happen? Because that seems to be, I don't want to say significant amount of time after the fall of the Hex, but enough time that she's already seeming to have warped her mind a little bit with the use of the Darkhold, and now suddenly Billy is calling out to her. But now we know that Billy pretty much immediately after the fall of the Hex entered William's body and William was unconscious, started living in this life. So at what point does he call out to his mom? Is that a subconscious thing that he still has not yet acknowledged who he truly is? I'm not sure. Was she able to connect with the piece of Billy that was still living subconsciously, even though he was not fully conscious of that because she was using the Darkhold. And we know that the Darkhold, does a lot of things with souls and all of that. So maybe she was able to reach him on a deeper level. I'm not sure. But I do want to bring that end credit scene back because now what we've learned about the immediate aftermath for Billy calls that timeline into question. And it makes me wonder how they relate.
The thing I will say about that is at that point, she was also aware of the multiverse.
True.
And so it may have never truly been her kids she was hearing and just a version of her kids. We can't forget by MOM, she's well aware that almost every other Wanda has her boys. She's one of the only ones that doesn't.
I think she's the only one because she's also the only Scarlet Witch.
Scarlet
which,
Witch, yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that being said, I think then you have to think about the fact that maybe she was so desperate. And as you pointed out, the Darkhold's warping her and her magic and what she knows. I think we have to assume that those were not the children she knew of, especially at this point, seeing Billy's trajectory and how he does immediately enter William's body and goes on living within him. Whether he admits to who he is or not, his soul immediately enters that body after William dies.
Yeah.
That's just what happens. So I do think, unless they find a different way to expand upon it, we have to be assuming that was another version of her children across the multiverse. And maybe they weren't even calling for like aggressive help. Like it might not be worst case scenario out here. It really could have just been like, I don't know, Sparky ran across the road. Like, I don't know. It doesn't have to
Or
be
you got
crazy.
stuck in a tree.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
cats usually do that, but children can too.
Well, right. Like anything could have been happening, and just where she was at mentally and the destruction to her mind and the warping that was already happening with the Darkhold just kind of grabbed it and said, okay, here we go. I just want to touch on one more thing, and it's the last 10 minutes. And it's just like, where do we go? And I know that's what we felt after, I think, last episode, where we were like, okay, cool. Everybody just got thrown into like sinking mud. But where do we go from here? We see Agatha and him walk away, but trailers have shown us that Jennifer and Lilia both live. Rio's been MIA since Alice died because if she's death, she's worried about the dead body. So we have yet to see her. We know we're going to get flashbacks from Agatha's past, and we know there are scenes of Agatha and Billy alone together through other trials maybe, but somewhere on the Witch's Road. So where are we going next? We have been told it's Lilia's trial. We technically don't have Lilia yet, and we all walked away.
Yeah, I don't know. I think one thing that people were pointing out last episode that I thought was absolutely brilliant is there is a scene. It was not from the mid-season trailer. It was from one of the ones that we got, before the show even premiered, where we see Lilia and Jennifer clawing their way out of the dirt into Westview proper, which is definitely interesting because now they're no longer on the road, so they have to re-enter. So what does that look like? Because they don't have a full coven to open the road, but yet we're being told that they have to be back on it because we're going through Lilia's trial. And last
The
I
road
checked,
didn't
you can't have-
close. Don't forget, that's how the Salem 7 followed them in. They didn't close the doors.
Oh, true. Well, then I guess they just have to go back through, and that's how they're going to catch up, back to where they are. I would imagine that once a trial is done, that it's not like they have to relive the trial. So, at some point, they're all going to meet back up, and we're going to kind of go on. I actually think episode 7 is very similarly going to mirror episodes 3 and 4. In the sense that it's going to be a trial episode. I think it's going to ratchet up the intensity. I think that what we're going to see in Lilia's trial is going to be intensely traumatic, as we've been saying this whole time. I mean, obviously, everybody's has been traumatic for different reasons, but I think Lilia's, just due to her age and some of the things that she's dealt with, I don't think it's a coincidence that she is the oldest witch on the road and she is the one who is most sensitive to the stereotypes. I know we made a joke about it last episode, but where does that come from? I think that comes from her having seen the vilification of the witches and everything, her entire life. And it went from, brute violence against them, which obviously Agatha has also lived through, and Jennifer as well. But then also now the way that they're represented in media. And so she's so sensitive to that. And I think we're going to see maybe why that is, whether that's her coven being attacked. And again, like her divination powers don't save them, or she misinterprets them, or she forgets that she had this vision and then she doesn't remember until after they're already dead. Whatever that is, I think that that's going to be an important piece, not only to understand Lilia, but whatever we uncover in that trial about the others, because it's never just been about the witch whose focus it is. It's also what's revealing, and that particular trauma also brings out in the others. And I think that's where it's going to get really interesting. Do I think Rio comes back? Yes, obviously. You didn't just use Aubrey Plaza for like 3 episodes and call it a day. If she's Lady Death, she has a lot more work to do, just in general. I'm not saying everybody's going to die, but there's that. So I don't know when or where she, continues on with them. Are they even able to go on without her into the next trial? Probably not. Don't you have to have a full coven in order to enter every trial? So
And if it's her trial, I would assume you need her.
I'm talking about Rio. Like, that's why
Oh,
I'm saying we need Rio. Definitely we're getting Lilia back. That's a given. But I think we also will need Rio in order to enter the trial.
I don't know. I think that's kind of a gray area, though, because technically, unless we're going to find out Mrs. Hart had some sort of magic up her sleeve somewhere, they went into the first trial without a full coven.
This is true. I mean, I don't mean to diminish, because obviously they've spent so much time talking about the distinction between witches and why everyone has their specialty and the special sauce that they bring to the road. But technically, they had the right number of bodies. Like, they had the right number of women there if one of them was mortal. Although, again, I'm going to bring up Deborah Jo Rupp's little comments about her arc. Maybe she's not a regular mortal.
I'm going to bring up the fact that when I said that maybe the coven's Wiccans, and I'm calling him that for a reason, if it is his coven, or he actually is a member of the coven, he still would have fulfilled possibly that Green Witch role.
Can a witch be both? Because he would also need to be the Blood Witch.
Right. And I think that's complicated because technically William Kaplan's not Wanda Maximoff's blood. Technically speaking, neither is Billy Maximoff, but that's its own complication. But technically, inside William Kaplan's body, does he still qualify as a blood witch anymore?
I have a feeling, based on the vibes of the show, that blood doesn't necessarily mean DNA for witches. I think it's who you were raised by.
I don't think that's true. I think off of the definitions we got when they were searching for Alice, I think it quite literally is a blood lineage.
I don't know.
And so if that's true, he technically probably doesn't qualify as a blood witch. But I read in one of the other episodes, his nickname that he goes by Wiccan can be associated with earth magic, which is a green witch.
Yeah. I still want to unpack at some point, and I hope they do, what they meant by Rio being the Green Witch, because that feels important.
Well, I'm going to throw something crazy out there. And by crazy, I mean, it's going to sound stupid, but whatever. It's going to take my science brain that I have rather than a magic brain. Technically, all dead people go back to the earth, right?
I was thinking something similar. Yeah.
Yeah. So I know that got a little gruesome for a second there, but is that not a fact? I mean, I am still scarred by being in like kindergarten or first grade and getting that lesson. And I don't know who thought it was a good idea to be like, yeah, let's tell a bunch of 6-year-olds that one day when you die, your body's going to deteriorate over time and go back to the earth. Like, I remember that fully in my brain. But it's a fact. So her being the Green Witch, I mean,
What's more natural than the circle of life?
yeah.
All right, I have one thing I want to point out, because I clocked this in the episode, went back and paused, then forgot it this morning, and took time out of my morning routine to be like, what was that thing? I made a mental note to self. I need to actually write things down. What was that thing I made a mental note to talk about in the episode? And I almost forgot until right now.
Okay.
In Agatha's bio on that website that Billy was visiting, it says something very, very interesting. It says that she's the only known witch to come off the witch's road.
Yes. I also clocked that. They were moving quite fast.
That's
but
why I
clocked
paused.
that. I don't know what that means, but I don't know if she'll make it off again. I think, obviously, Billy will.
Yeah.
But I'm not thinking we're going to see our cast of characters make it off this road. That being said, does the Witch's Road have its own rules regarding who makes it? Or is it just simply the fact that other covens don't do what it takes? I think Agatha has proven over time she is fully committed to doing what it takes no matter what. especially at this point in her life when it comes to self-preservation.
I have so many thoughts. I do. I hear you on what you're saying about Agatha not making it through, but Catherine Hahn's been out there saying, I see room for magic in other places and I hope I get to be in it. So, I mean, maybe she's trolling us, which they're all supposed to do. I'm sure they're media trained specifically by Marvel. Obviously, she's an actress. She's been media trained for years, but I think Marvel makes them, in my heart of hearts, I truly believe Marvel makes them go through a special boot camp that Tom Holland just happened to, like, I don't know, be listening to music during or something because he obviously ignores all of it. But unless she's trolling us, she's kind of hinting that, hey, I might be back in future projects.
Fair.
I also think that she has been so well received. Catherine Hahn is a big actress. It would be a waste, in my personal opinion, to only have her in WandaVision and then this project. That aside, I think when it comes to the Witch's Road in general, what this brings up for me is a very big sense of dissonance because it seems like the Witch's Road up until this point, when we got that piece of knowledge, it's been set up as this transformative experience for witches. I mean, Alice's mom went like whatever platinum or something singing this song that is this anthem for this road. It has always, to me, been interpreted as this beautiful self transformation, evolutionary opportunity for these covens, these groups of women to get what they want and to go for things and improve their lives. But now we're finding out that only one in the history of witches that is known, only one has ever survived. Is there a metaphor there for the female experience? Absolutely. But also, I think it reframes the road in general and it makes me question how many witches have lost their lives on this road thinking that they were going to get something at the end. What is at the end? Maybe they are actually surviving up until the end and it's something very, very dark that they are surviving. Maybe that's one of Agatha's, not her original trauma, because we know her original trauma was her mama, but maybe that's her secondary trauma even before what happened to her child.
I don't disagree with that. I think we also have to remember, though, that a lot of the witches that, and I say a lot, the ones we've seen in the show, all were like the Witch's Road. Half of them didn't even believe it was real. I would have to think if they don't believe, and our little study group is like, okay, you got 3 witches. Like I know
It's a
when you
really
kind of
small sample.
yeah, the sample's not great. So when you try to expand that to like hundreds of thousands of witches, I understand. But we have to remember that probably already limits the amount of people who go down and even attempt to walk the witch's road to begin with. I'm not saying what you're saying is wrong. I'm just saying let's remember not every single witch or every coven. It's honestly probably 20%, if that. That might be a large amount. Think about walking the witch's road. I do wonder how she is the only survivor, but I think it comes back to something you pointed out, and it was who's in charge of the witch's road.
I told you that was going to be important. You told me I was overthinking it.
I did at the time, so you were overthinking it, but new evidence proves there might be somebody behind it.
Therefore, my gut is good.
Your gut is not good. Let's be real. You've seen some real examples of that not being very true.
That is so
Either
rude.
way, if the road is being controlled by someone, or I think on the other side of it, it is this magical entity that it does its own thing. Somebody had to create it at some point, but regardless of who created it, rules are rules, and maybe it doesn't keep them, or maybe the rules are that nobody's supposed to leave the road. It doesn't really matter, right? I think whether it's an entity or it's being controlled, whatever's behind it is keeping witches from finishing it. You pointed out maybe there's something at the end, and I think that's it. I think, yeah, people lose people throughout the trials, but there's a reason Agatha's the only one who left. She also was very tight-lipped when it came to that. She never mentioned why she was the only one who got off that road. I think she ended up sacrificing the rest of her coven to get out, which other witches would never do because their coven is like their sisters, remember? But she doesn't have that feeling about her coven.
Yeah. Well, she's definitely callous is a kind way to put it.
Yeah.
Heartless would be the crueler term.
She's made it very clear how she feels about covens and why she isn't a part of them. So I think truly the first time she walked the road, I think it comes down to the fact that you have to make some sort of a sacrifice at the end, and she's not afraid to do it, while other covens are trying to work together, and in doing so, it probably kills them.
But I honestly think, to your point about what you were saying, you didn't think the ladies were going to make it off. This coven does not consider themselves sisters. So I actually think that that's a vote of confidence for them actually surviving the road,
Fair.
because they are not going to approach it in the cooperative manner that 99.99% of other covens are going to do.
That's fair.
Either way, this has just made me more excited now for 7, 8, and 9, because I was a little bit like my momentum was slowing. Now I feel like I'm picking back up because I think that there's some real answers coming. I mean, knowing that we're in the back third and that we've only got 2 weeks because 8 and 9 are coming out together, I'm very, very excited to see how this is all going to end. On that note, we are going to call it for our reactions to episode 6. It was enlightening, and I hope that we see some of the direct ramifications from episode 5 that we kind of skipped over or minimized in this episode. If you're looking forward to our reactions to the remaining episodes of Agatha All Along, you can follow on your podcast platform of choice. Check out the website, it's linked below if you are looking for additional information, or the blog that Katie referenced a couple of times through this episode. Last but not least, if you are a fan and you want to help us make the show better, you can also support us on Buy Me a Coffee, which is linked below. Any amount, anything you can do is greatly appreciated. And we are just grateful that y'all are here listening to us on a regular or semi-regular basis.
You guys can also give us a follow on our socials, which are linked below in the show notes. And as Taylor mentioned, go ahead on our YouTube and check out our weekly news segment, Sister Scoops. We are only 2 weeks left of Agatha All Along, which is ridiculous to me, but don't worry, we will be back next week for episode 7. We're very excited, as Taylor said. We hope you guys are too. And as always, Marvel just blew your mind, so let's talk about it.